Hello, and welcome to the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast, the podcast redefining women's health, one unfiltered conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jacqueline Rose, and every week I'll sit down with leading women's health experts and real women to share their lived experiences, bust health myths, challenge outdated and uninformed narratives, and explore what's really possible for women. We'll talk about periods, fertility, menopause, hormones, aging, and everything in between. This podcast is for every woman who ever felt confused, dismissed, or left out of the conversation about her own health. It is a space to celebrate women, break the silence, and open up conversations between mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. Please hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode and share this podcast with your daughters, family, and friends. Let's get on with the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. I am very excited for this conversation today. It's not something that we have covered from this particular direction, so I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Whitney. Whitney, welcome. I'm really happy you're here because I think we're going to talk about a lot of really interesting things, obviously women's health and menopause related, but from a slightly different, more holistic perspective. So tell us who you are, what you do, and we'll jump right in.
Yes. Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you and talk about one of my favorite topics. I am Whitney Erwin. I'm the founder of a holistic healthcare practice that I founded in 2015, Four Seasons Harmony. That has been my full-time career since then, my deepest lifelong love and passion and calling on planet Earth. And I grew up the daughter of two tenured college professors that both had PhDs. So I grew up in a very academic family and, like 5 years old, talking about critical thinking a lot. So that's something I've been influenced by my entire life. And then
Right.
I especially love to help women with chronic hormonal imbalances to restore and build vibrant energy, to alleviate chronic pain, and live a long, healthy life.
Amazing. So we have a lot of crossover in what we do, but from a slightly different perspective, because you also talk about women's health, hormonal imbalances, really supporting women as a result of these hormonal fluctuations at all different stages. We'll get to the perimenopause, menopause stage, but you do it from quite a holistic approach in terms of herbal medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, or approach to health and healing. So before we sort of talk about the issues or what you do, maybe tell us what herbal medicine is, what Vedic medicine is, how it differs to either some of the other holistic approaches like other things out there, and obviously how it's very different to your conventional Western medicine, and why you find it so impactful and so significant.
Yes, I have observed that these are really key pieces that support the success of every single woman that comes into my practice, which I realized last year when I had a decade of service, we were kind of looking at thousands of women at this point.
Wow.
And I love everything holistic. I mean, everything under the sun, every single type of modality. Those are two of my specialties. And I find that the vast majority of women that come in the door have not really had anybody support them in a comprehensive way where they can
Right.
apply medicine, Ayurvedic medicine in a practical way in their daily lifestyle for the long term, not just for short-term symptomatic relief, but for really long-term sustainable healing. And so that's what's kept me doing it for so long. And I see there's a tremendous need that has never slowed down. And herbal medicine has been practiced in every single culture on the globe for thousands of years. Like, I find that for most of the people that I work with, they feel like it's a homecoming. It just feels very natural and intuitive.
Mm.
are evolved to be like 100% dependent on plants. And that's just so necessary for our basic survival. And having dozens of herbs in one's diet and traditional cultural systems is just completely normal. So I feel like there's been a disconnect and there's been breaks of that happening. And there's a lot of reasons why. But I don't feel like this is like a trendy thing, maybe trendier in certain areas of the world culturally. But as far as humanity, it's something that
Yeah.
we're relying on for food and medicine. And there's just incredible wisdom and insight from holistic healthcare systems that have been practiced intact for thousands of years, which includes Ayurvedic medicine. There's many others that I love to practice and study and offer my women a lot of service. But that one is so profound and completely changed my life years ago when I was doing my own personal healing journey.
Yeah.
And it made such a dramatic difference. And I was like, wow, like I feel like more women need to know that this is available. It's not the only thing you can do. I found nobody was, 0% of people are excluded from doing Ayurvedic medicine. It's inclusive to everybody. It can complement anything else you're doing. And it just really helps to support and accentuate their life. So Ayurveda is known by many scholars to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest,
Yeah.
natural intact holistic health system. It's also the foundation of all Western and conventional medicine. So it predates Greek, Persian, Oriental, Chinese medicine. And by oral lineage teachings, it goes back a lot further, even 40,000 years. The first
Wow.
documented texts are between like 200 to 400 BCE. And I just find there's a lot of very advanced teachings about women's health and a lot of other systems I love so much. But sometimes I just feel like we plateau or it becomes a too general, one size fits all. And are you ever going to
Yeah.
really hold space for an individual to have different needs and tendencies and health patterns, not that it's better or worse, but just different. And so it gets very highly customized and it has the roadmap to really take women very far with their health. And if you're new to Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurveda literally means the science of life and longevity in Sanskrit. That's what it means. So it's very scientific. It's the health and wellness side to yoga, also called the sister science to yoga. And they complement each other very well. So.
Amazing. So, what are you seeing? Let's sort of talk about what you're seeing with your clients in terms of the hormonal imbalances, the symptoms, the experiences, sort of how hormonal imbalance is showing up for your clients. And then how are you using this holistic approach to support your clients?
Yeah, so I saw my first year of practice this overwhelming unmet need for a variety of different health experiences and conditions that I kept tracing back when I would do a deep intake process and I get curious, we'd look underneath the surface, and I kept seeing this common unifying thread of unresolved hormonal health imbalances. And yeah, over 10 years later, I still see the same trend. It's just
Yeah.
something that is unmet. And so that can look like, I mean, some of the classic things that we think of like PMS and
Right.
hot flashes, infertility. But I also find it's kind of like this sneaky mask for other things that I work with a lot,
Mm,
pushing out like anxiety, depression, insomnia, um, feeling like instability with energy levels, chronic fatigue. So and when we look at a holistic health perspective, we're looking at the interconnectedness of all of the systems in the body, and there's a
yeah.
lot of relationships. So we also look at mind, body, and spirit is inextricably linked. And so
Yeah.
it absolutely embracing
Right.
physical health, but it's also embracing emotional, spiritual, psychological well-being to really look at supporting the whole person.
Yeah. So I think what's really interesting is that some of the things you've said are things that women just assume is what happens as you navigate being a woman. So, really bad PMS or infertility challenges. It's sort of okay. It's not nice. It's not fun. But that's just what it means to be, a woman living in our day and age type of thing, or the exhaustion or the insomnia or fibromyalgia, I think is probably a great example that,
Mhm.
80% of patients suffering or experiencing fibromyalgia are women. Um, Thyroid issues, things that we just sort of get diagnosed with that are just
Mhm.
like, okay, fine, you know, like that was my luck, you know, I've been diagnosed with this or that or whatever, and great, okay, that's now my life. I've got to manage and deal with it. But it feels that, and especially from what you're saying, is that really, and as I talk about a lot, these symptoms, these diagnoses are a sign of imbalance, of something going on in your body that I'm sure you've heard the phrase disease is dis-ease in the body. There is some type of something going on that just isn't um, right. And again, and I love what you say, because it's not just only the physical, it's the mind, body, spirit. There's something is going on that is expressed in these symptoms. So how are you talking about this with your clients? How are you getting them to understand that there's something deeper going on? It's not just that they've now got a diagnosis and, you know, good luck.
Yeah, well, it's a range of people that come in who I have the privilege of serving in my practice. And I would say I tend to attract a lot of complex health cases and get a lot of
Mm,
referrals where a lot of times people have been dealing with chronic health imbalances for a long time
yeah,
and they're so burned out and they've gotten just really, short, brief, like dismissive comments, uh, or they've tried strategies that haven't worked and they're really open to trying something new and just nobody has been able to help them out yet.
right.
And so I do a very deep dive when I meet with them and I explain the process of what we'll do together. It's always in a highly customized way, but there's like core things that I don't skip with anybody. And to speak what you were talking about, this idea of kind of getting used to symptoms and pain and disease and normalizing that, it's
Yeah,
like an epidemic in women's health. I mean,
yeah,
that's I still haven't seen that shift. And it's really tragic because, as you know, as a fellow health practitioner, that's something that we can work with. There's a lot of support available, not about perfection, but there's a lot of tools and wisdom and knowledge to help move through those things. And just this morning, I was doing part B of an Ayurvedic assessment with a new client who's a mother of two, who is an amazing healer, massage therapist, and explaining something she had just never heard before. It was like all these green lights were going off. And so with Ayurvedic medicine, with the assessment process, so I do a huge intake and then I interweave that at the same time. And this is really foundational if you look into Ayurvedic medicine as far as how do they talk about uh, like different types of health needs and what's the languaging around that. And there's a term called one's prakriti. So this is one's lifelong constitution. It's like your DNA, your unchanging biological blueprint that you came in with.
yeah.
And that's one of my specialties that I take a lot of seriousness around that. I take several hours. I look at people's tongue and pulses. I look at like what are the entirety of patterns around this person for their whole life that brings them to the present.
Wow.
Where are the kinks? What are things that are more recent tendencies? What are lifelong tendencies? I just put it all together. And then I also talk about the health imbalances, which we call Vikruti, which is variable. These are things that change. And there's a really important difference that I find is a new concept for so many of my people where Prakriti, according to Ayurvedic medicine, is your perfect state of health and well-being. It's not something we want to change, even though there's several different general constitutional types, not better or worse, but just very different. And so what you need to restore balance might be very different than somebody
Yeah,
else, and that's okay. And not trying to compare yourself or try to fit yourself into one size fits all model, but there's nothing wrong there. There's no disease, there's no
yeah.
symptoms. Now, the Vikriti is variable. That's an overlay, and almost everybody comes in with a long list of things. It's common, but that's classified differently. And that's where I bring in recommendations and new protocols and tips. And we look at diminishing those things until it's at a mild and manageable state. And it's not something that's hurting the person anymore. And that's said to be possible. So I believe that that's possible for every single person before they come in. And it's something you can't compare yourself to other people. It doesn't matter how long that it takes, but just that it's possible. And that seems to open up the floodgates of consciousness where people are like, wow, I can heal, even if this is very deep or chronic.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And very rewarding. Yes.
Yeah. It sounds exceptionally powerful and obviously very different to the 10-minute appointment you're going to get at your conventional health practitioner's appointment. Even if you're working with, a private practitioner or a specialist, they're not doing this deep dive and they don't really understand how to do a really deep and intense health history in the same way that you're describing it. So it's very, very it's a very different way of understanding health.
Yes, and I'm no doubt looking back, like I was like, well, this was a missing piece in my own health journey for so long,
Yeah.
and not getting a lot of answers or enough traction. And it's like you just can't cut corners in certain sense, and you do have to take the time to get to know somebody and just establish a very strong foundation.
Yeah.
I find it ethical. I can't do it any other way. And my people are like ready to fall off their chair when they come. They like can't believe they're like, this isn't just a 10-15 minute thing. Like and I actually care about them too. Like I
Right.
can't any
Right. Right. So we're talking about hormonal imbalance, and I think it's really important to say that hormonal imbalance leads to symptoms. Your symptoms are real. They're not made up, but always asking the question why and where are they coming from, and your very deep analysis and understanding of what's gone on with this person in front of you, and that hormonal imbalance can happen at any stage of our life cycle, especially and most profoundly at perimenopause. Now, perimenopause is a time when we know that there is biological hormonal fluctuation. So we know there's going to be hormonal imbalance. I use that word hormonal imbalance because I think our popular culture around the menopause conversation has sort of marked perimenopause as hormonal imbalancing, like a hormonal imbalance time, as a negative. Your hormonal imbalance during perimenopause is going to lead to these debilitating symptoms, just like hormonal imbalance in all your other years is going to lead to symptoms and all these other things that we've spoken about. What's ironic is that actually during perimenopause, our hormones are meant to fluctuate, and there is meant to be some type of change, fluctuation, variability in our hormones. So, how do you see this perimenopause time? How do you see hormonal imbalance during this time? And what are you seeing with clients who are experiencing sort of symptoms as a result of hormonal imbalance during this time?
Yes, yeah, wonderful question and also observations. And I agree with so much of what you had noted. And also, I would start with Ayurvedic medicine's perspective on menopause. And that's something that I've done like a specialized certification through the National Ayurvedic Medical Association and just incredible amount of clinical experience. I learned so much from working with people and getting their direct feedback, what's working, where we need more support. And Ayurveda has no negative connotation around the major rite of passage of menopause. And I still
Mm,
find that to be so profound. And
yeah.
where I'm living in the US, there's just this doomsday mentality that's still,
Yes.
and tragically, that's for often reasons that indicate a lack of support. And there can be a lot of things that could go off balance, but that's not like an accepted philosophical view from Ayurvedic medicine, where like, oh yeah, it's just going to be horrible. You have to, you know, just pull up your pants and deal with it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do. Just get yourself ready, embrace that. It's just a complete myth. And I see that there's things that are recommended that are embedded into traditional cultural wisdom and lifestyle, such as taking herbs decades before menopause, talking with older women, learning from a young age how you can take care of and support your hormones. So it's not this complete shock when you get there. It's something you know is natural, is going to happen. And then bringing in, specialized recommendations during that time where it's not seen as like, oh, sometimes you might need, it's like, no, 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 this is part of being a woman in a beautiful,
Yep.
empowering way. And you can actually go through beautifully. It can be a time of thriving, of transformation. I mean, what I see when that's not supported is sometimes people come like, wow, I feel so different than I have in 20 years. And like suddenly, like I gained like 15 pounds. I can't get it
Yeah.
off. That's unusual for me. I'm having hot flashes all day, all night. I can't think straight. But those are things we work through with herbal medicine, with Ayurveda, with lifestyle approaches. And I think the earlier the better, ideally.
Yes.
But those are the things we can avoid by bringing in more support earlier on.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, what are the strategies that women should be looking at, based on your approach and the Ayurvedic approach to sort of health and, you know, healing or wellness? What are some of the basic things you're looking to share with your clients? Basic things that women should be doing, even if they're not going through a whole full approach? Or what are some of the things that you're really looking at in terms of support for women, whether it be, hormonal imbalance at, pre perimenopause stages or in perimenopause and beyond?
Yes. Yeah. So I will speak to more of what I see as helpful in a general sense, like for
Yes.
all women within women's health leading up to that. And of course, there's individually customized things that we could bring in
Yeah.
for every person, and absolutely receive those and add those in on your own unique journey as well. So I would say that hormonal imbalance usually don't just magically go away, with perimenopause and menopause. And so one is just bringing more awareness around yourself, acknowledging how you're feeling, reaching out for support when there's something like, and we could say like an earlier onset. And you can absolutely bring in support when something is a more deeper level of manifestation, but it may take a lot more time and energy. And so, when that's a pattern I hear a lot, it's like, well, this has been going on for years, and I just
Yeah.
didn't listen to my body, and now it's so bad, like I'm really desperate. And uh, and that's fine, but if you can start earlier, then I think it'll be much smoother for you. And not from a bad lens or negative. It's like a place of I can learn so much more about my body. And so like say like so if, like well, my sleep is different. Okay, noticing that. Do you feel like you have more dryness? Because that's one thing that naturally happens as your hormones gradually start to decrease in
Mm.
perimenopause and very significantly drop off after menopause is complete and you're just no longer bleeding at all. And that takes, about a year is a classic definition when you're not bleeding at all. The average age is 51, but there's such a range there.
Yeah.
So there's usually a lot of things that happen before that. And bringing in herbs like shatavari is a big one I talk a lot about, which is in the asparagus family. And you can throw that in smoothies. You can put that into like energy balls. You could have that as a tincture or a tea. And like start to get that in your diet every day for a long period of time. That herb is highly known to support perimenopause and menopause in Ayurvedic medicine. It also is reflective of a target herbal action that I like to bring in. So sometimes a lot more herbs than that within the realm of what we call hormonal normalizers. So
Mm-hmm.
a very special classification of herbs that can help to naturally bioregulate your hormones to keep them at a biodynamic level. So key players like progesterone and estrogen, and making sure that you don't have too much or too little. And of course, they do naturally decline. And as that's happening, the body goes through a drying out process. And so, increasing hydration with your herbs, also with your diet, with your foods. Some things like really dry skin, vaginal dryness, like hot flashes, those can be connected to systemic dryness in the body. And so get your water intake in, you get on some good demulcent herbs as well that you can drink and sip on. And do that, as a lifestyle, not thinking like anything's wrong per se. Like this is a beautiful thing you can do, and it can, help you to keep looking very young and youthful. It's really good for your skin. There's like so many other positive side effects of this. And lifestyle wise, that's like 90%-ish of Ayurvedic medicine. And so, another thing that happens, which I'm sure you're very well aware of, is that your reproductive organs gradually stop producing and regulating your hormones in the same way that you have been experiencing since the onset of menstruation. And so they're not going to be governing those physiological functions as much anymore, very little. But your adrenal and kidney organs are going to become very big players. And so we know that that's related to the stress response. And this is missed a lot, where like, okay, going into menopause, one of the greatest indicators I see is if you're really stressed out, then that's going to put you in a more vulnerable position of where you might have symptoms of difficulty. And so if you're like, you can check in with yourself in perimenopause and you're like, okay, I genuinely feel nourished and taken care of in my lifestyle, a good support system, my health feels very robust. Fantastic. You're feeling like that's not the case for you, and just, seeking support, seeing if you can get ahead of the curve where you can manage your stress as best possible, so it's not hurting you, and preserve the integrity of your adrenal and kidneys going into that time. So yeah, there's several things. There's so much. I love this topic. That there.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is we don't talk about adrenals, kidney, liver function as part of the perimenopause. I mean, I do, because I know how important it is. But when you go to your doctor and your doctor's like, yeah, you can take some HRT. We're not saying HRT is bad, but they're not looking at what's going on with the adrenals, what's going on with the kidneys, what's going on with the liver, what's going on with the thyroid. How are all these key systems in the body impacting what is going on during perimenopause and menopause? Like it's sort of not a conversation. It's not even thought about to be addressed as, we need to look at what's going on in the whole body.
Totally. Yeah. And what I've seen too, sometimes worse, where they like, I notice things are changing and they do seek help and they're like blown off, or like, no, that's all in your head, or like, you just have to suffer through hot flashes from medical providers. And as you and I know, like, that's just really unethical, my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you really haven't done the deeper work, or you don't have training, because we know that it's very real. It's become a very hot topic. And you see it's also okay, I think, philosophically, like kind of wrapping your head around like this rite of passage. Again, it can be a very beautiful, empowering time, but it's a natural change. And with change, sometimes can stir up fear or vulnerability, sometimes a sense of loss of self. But what can happen through that is you become somebody that's more authentic and genuine for yourself. It's like the thing that you've always been wanting to do for the past like 10, 20 years. It tends to come up, I find, during menopause. And this is what Ayurvedic medicine teaches as well. Like this massive transformational time psychologically, where it's like, wow, like I really have to bring this project forward, or I can't hold myself back from this bucket list item. It's like vitally important. And so they also have this like extra mojo flowing, where it's like, okay, I'm inspired to make these big changes. I may not fully understand what's going on. And if you can listen to that and follow your heart, then you're manifesting your dreams, and you bring in a lot more fulfillment and contentment. You're living a happy life.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back a second and ask you about why you think women in this sort of in their 20s, 30s, early 40s, why you're seeing so much more hormonal imbalance expressed as symptoms and, disease and pain and struggle. Why do you think, as you said, you sort of like talked about the approach in Ayurvedic medicine, about the innate way that you present, and then these things that are placed on top of you, the variable things that are, impacting you. So what are you seeing as maybe the reasons for hormonal imbalance in women these days? Can you point to certain things that are going on that is the reason why maybe women are experiencing this more?
Yes, and I think there's a lot of variables. I like we are witnessing this more, and some of what I've seen is like, okay, so these are natural changes, then why are there so many kinks in this natural? So it's like
Exactly.
nothing wrong with the seed of a plant that's going to flower. You would never say that there's something wrong with the plant if it's
Yeah.
not blossoming. You would say, okay, let's look at the soil and the environment and let's create the right environmental conditions for that plant to do what it knows how to do. I compare
Exactly.
mental health the exact same way. And so it's like the question is then why is she not flowering, in her 20s and 30s?
Yeah.
And so what is that environment like? I feel like stress is a huge thing. And I mean, that's such a
Huge.
big that's thrown around. And I mean toxic stress when I say that. And we can have healthy stress. I mean, too little stress can be just as stressful as too much stress, or like not fulfilling your life purpose can be very stressful. So like you can tend to that on so many levels. But like the pressures that I feel like young girls are put through, and that was my own experience as well, where it's like you could be like screaming on the inside and like
Yeah.
nobody's getting what you need, and you're kind of pushing yourself through these artificial steps that sometimes miss the celebration of coming into womanhood. I think celebrating that rite of passage in myriad shapes or form, however is meaningful for you,
Yeah.
but really honoring that, and like that is a very significant transition to go from girlhood like to maidenhood. And how can we honor that, and that there's major physiological changes? So I have women with PhDs coming in that have horrible 10 out of 10 PMS symptoms in their 20s. It's not lack of education. I think it's lack of access to the right education and not
Yeah.
valuing women's health, because like so many of the people I'm working, they're like, I would have done this at 14 if I had known, and nobody had talked about it.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's either getting it from your family most of the time, which isn't always a guarantee. And if you're not, then the culture isn't really helping you out. And a lot of women just falling through the cracks.
Yeah. I think the cultural language is a really important piece of the puzzle here, because in the language that you're talking, that you're working with your clients, it's obvious, and the joy and the celebration and the connection and the listening to your body and the mind body spirit and all this stuff, like it's just it's the language you're talking, but it's not the language that we're talking in the regular women's health space. It's not the language that is being talked about in the conventional Western medical healthcare space. And there's a cultural language that, sort of going back to what we said near the beginning of our conversation, that is just what to be expected if you are a woman. There are these milestones, but it's all going to be, it's assumed, or there is a lot of expectation that there's going to be pain, suffering, struggle along the way. And that's sort of the cultural language that women are growing up in.
Yes, and yeah, busting through those myths. I think it's like actually abusive, at this point, looking back, where it's like robbing women, especially when they're so young, of like the opportunity to thrive and bring in healthy babies to this world. I mean, that's the only way that it happens is through
Right.
the hormone health system of women. Like I can think of nothing more beautiful, and absolutely we're celebrating. And yet, why does that seem to be so hard for the culture to get?
Yeah.
And women were also left out of medical research for a long time.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
factor. And
Yep.
so you need more research, high quality research that includes women's hormonal variables. And I feel like you have to really dig deep, like really reading like between the lines and research studies, and making sure like if we're applying what is considered current evidence-based knowledge, that it's not just talking about men, that women were included in those studies. Yeah.
Really, really fascinating. I want to ask you a question about the energetic connection between women and this sort of energetic connection between women and then sort of intergenerational women obviously this podcast is, about the conversations between mothers and daughters and this intergenerational conversation, but in sort of a holistic approach in herbal medicine and an Vedic approach, there is also a lot about energy and energy flow and the connection between sort of human beings that sort of have these types of sort of that have similar energies and things like that. So can you maybe share a thought about that, about the way that women are connected, or that women can support each other, women that, sort of that piece of the more spiritual piece of it, maybe?
Yes, and I feel like that is incredibly important. And I'm often known to say, bringing back the village. I know when I saw your podcast name, I was like, if I could sum up the heart of my whole life's work, it would be that. It's like things to younger generations and supporting and nurturing each other. So I feel like that's another thread of traditional cultural practices and
Yeah.
wisdom that has really served us so well since time immemorial. And I just did a women's circle in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. It was so beautiful. And like we were talking together, and it's just the energy that happened. Like, I don't know if you
Yeah.
could ever put into words, but it was palpable. And I mostly do my one-on-one clinical work. I just love doing those group spaces. And I've
Yeah.
always the women that I work with that okay, when you learn how to take care of yourself, you support your highest health and healing. And that's a very big journey. And that it may have taken a long time for somebody to get to the point of really reaching out and receiving help. I think that's very
Yeah.
courageous. It's so selfless. And it absolutely will change your family and community in a positive way. It's just how it always works. Like I always say, whether you're trying to or not, it just will. But then it's this incredible trend where it's so much more than one person's health restoring, rebalancing, where they're like, they can't help but tell their friends. They can't help but do the same thing for their
Yeah.
daughters and nieces. And then the modeling thing too, which I know you do. You have three daughters, and what a gift to be able to look at older women that are in an empowered place in their health. And we don't see that. It can be something like, well, I don't want to be like that. And sometimes like, well, I don't want to be like my mom because she went through all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that it has to be that. But it's like, wow, like my mom had all of these things. I know that that's possible. I know when menopause is going to be like, I've got this, right? Like I have my
Yeah.
circle set up. So it's so big and it feels really, really good. Like I could just I'm trying to think of anybody that hasn't benefited, right? From conversations, from women
Yeah.
supporting.
So I love doing workshops, face-to-face group workshops, because it's sort of, like the women in the room, there's always an energy. There's always something that happens when you get women in a room and you talk about things that they've been experiencing and feeling, but they've never been able to give language to, or no one has ever said, what you're going through is really normal. And that energy and vibrancy of having, women in a circle sharing and talking and being open. I also love that space, really, really love that space. And there really is something very energetically uplifting about it.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like that's medicine. It's just storytelling. And what
Yeah.
I saw this past weekend, and I myself, when I've had a strong value of friendship my whole life. I grew up between two brothers, and so I didn't grow up with a sister. And I had like an amazing rockstar grandmother I was very close to. She was very healthy through her 80s. I'm so, so grateful for. And my mom and aunts, but it's very different when you don't
Yeah.
have that like sisterhood connection. So I was looking for that for my friends. I feel like there's a lot of things I went through that I would keep to myself if it was hard or painful. And I was like, I must be the only one. And
Right.
this is an isolated thing. And I feel like that's just always demystified in these circles. And so like people are like, I've been through this challenge. And it was just like the pressure just released and be like, oh, like, I can relate to that person's story. And they shared something like I went through and they overcome that. There's just so much that happens in those moments of sharing.
Yeah, 100%. So, as we come to the end of our conversation, I still have left the one question that I ask all my guests. But before that, is there anything else you really want to share about your work, about what you're seeing with women, about how you support women? Anything that we haven't touched on that you want to just share?
Well, I feel like we're at a place that there's a major shift that's happening where there is a lot more access to
Yeah,
hormonal health. And just a generation ago, that was not available. And
yeah,
as much as we still have a lot of struggles and we can see all the things that are holding us back, there's a tide that's turning. And of course, I like to ride that wave, be part of that momentum. And so I say keep looking for strengthening, putting the demand on having more accessibility and choices. I mean, for me, this is all about service. Like, what do you need? And make sure that your needs are met. I would say just never compromising. To think that like, oh, I have to suffer through, or if you get dismissed, like keep looking for the right
yeah.
practitioner, for the right people, for the right strategies that are out there. And you're definitely worth that journey of embodying long-term sustainable healing too.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so this podcast is called The Things I Want My Daughters to Know. And I ask every guest, what is the one thing you want your daughters to know? Whether it's your, biological daughters or goddaughters, nieces, that next generation of girls coming up. What is the one thing that you really want them to know?
Mm. I'd like to know that their self-worth is intrinsic, and it's something that nobody can ever diminish. The culture can't interfere with, no matter what anybody says, what opinion is projected toward you. Just don't listen to any of that. That is
Yeah,
not giving you the message that you are exceptionally beautiful and radiant with amazing gifts. And no matter what happens at any moment, that it can contribute to feeling like you're not that.
yeah.
It's inevitable. But knowing that that's just not real, that you have everything within you. And I'm so excited to see what you're going to contribute to this world, that we need you.
Yeah, I think that's like it's a message that keeps coming up, and I think it's a message that teen girls today are really struggling with to internalize because there is so much noise because of social media, because we seem to have done quite a bad job in instilling that in our children and our daughters especially at a really young age. um Something somewhere has shifted, and for whatever reason it's the most important thing that we need to give our kids, and somehow they're not getting that message, or that message isn't really percolating down so they actually feel and believe it. So I love that, and I think we've got to, I think as us as the adults have to do better to really instill that in our kids.
Yes, absolutely. And grateful that you feel aligned with that. Uh,
Yeah,
I do think it's something we can help to shift. And just seeing those things with children, even if it's not coming from the home or people that love and care about you, it's, picking up on those messages and dismantling those as mess. I think, young girls are so impressionable. They're looking for
yeah.
models. And yeah, true self-worth is something that's never something you can compromise. It's within you. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, it takes women years and years to learn it, somehow it's, I think only maybe women in postmenopause really, feel that, that I am who I am. You like me or don't like me, I'm just showing up in the world as my authentic self. So,
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, and it's a journey. It's okay, like what it takes to get there, but that is a big gift aspect. I think, yeah, like going
yeah,
through that, and you go through the pain and the suffering and all the noise, and then you come out so much stronger, more authentic, and then it's like
yeah,
I love myself exactly as I am, like finding that intrinsic joy within yourself. Where
yeah.
it's not conditional on anybody else and any other thing. And I see that a lot from perimenopause and menopause. And then afterward, it's like, there's an untouchable energy there.
Right, right, right. I wish we could bottle that and give it to our teens so that they didn't have to wait all those years to feel that.
Totally. Yes. I hope that's possible. To not show, that it will be one day and keep up, the path to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah. Well, Whitney, thank you. This has been a really interesting conversation. Definitely something that I think women need to know exists, because we're not talking about enough about the other ways to navigate women's health. We know about the conventional Western medicine, we know about HRT, we know about pharmaceuticals, but we're not talking enough about a more herbalistic approach, a more energetic, spiritual approach, and sort of how to bring this all together. So I really, really am so grateful that you've been sharing all your wisdom with us. Tell me, where can people find you? Where are you hanging out online if they want to follow you or learn more about what you do?
Yes. My website is www.fourseasonsharmony.com, and I work with people virtually all across the globe. And I have several different complementary professional resources for you. Like there's a document, 7 Steps to Creating Lasting Hormonal Health, that you're welcome to just drop your email address and receive right away,
Amazing.
anytime. And a newsletter, a new YouTube channel. I am on social media. I've been loving YouTube, and I can't wait to share this when the out. So just been sharing more video content and having a team to support me to do that. It's very exciting. So you can find me there as well.
Amazing. Well, everyone, check Whitney out. She really is bringing a different language and a different approach to women's health. So I'm really grateful that you joined me today. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. And everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Leave a review, follow us, make sure you don't miss another episode. And I look forward to seeing you at next week at another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast.
Thank you so much.